Today I'm wearing a dress shirt and not ears, and the reason for that is that for the first time ever, I think, we have a real official person actually coming talking to us. This is very big for our channel. So we are happy to introduce you to our guest today. His name is Jānis Sārts, and he is the director of NATO Strategic Communications Center of Excellence. Hi, Mark. Hi, Jānis. Good to see you guys.
Hello.
Good.
How are you?
Jānis, our first question would be very on topic right now. We know you do some job on studying disinformation, and we have the recent report. So, everyone knew that already Twitter is owned by Elon Musk, and it's now X, and the huge problem with disinformation is going on there. It is related to Ukraine. A lot of bot accounts, a lot of some weird accounts doing some informational warfare job against Ukraine, spreading misinformation. And just recently we found out that Elon Musk actually had his own communications with Russia's president, which influenced his decision on how he conduct his business. In terms of that, I have a question for you as a director of NATO Strategic Communications Center of Excellence, and as a person who studied disinformation and how to fight disinformation. What does it mean because it matters a lot in terms of modern war, in terms of modern security. What does it mean for NATO? Do NATO have any position in that? What should governments do in terms of informational safety? What should, for instance, United States do? Because it's a huge problem for us right now, but it could be a problem for the other NATO country. It should be a problem already for Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, and it could be a problem for the United States.
Okay, so I understood the question. Thank you very much. I'll probably start with clarifying my organization's role within NATO. So we're under the NATO's umbrella, but we're kind of research and development hub for NATO in this specific area. And that comes with a caveat. I would not be speaking the NATO's position. I will be speaking the position of our own Center of Excellence, which kind of gives me a bit more freedom because I don't have to go back to the 31 nations to ask whether they agree with that. So yes, disinformation, and I kind of increasingly don't like the word disinformation because it is pretty narrow in a sense. I think we should increasingly speak in the terms of influence operations, cognitive warfare, which is the way NATO frames it, because disinformation is a piece, but the idea is that, as is the war in Ukraine, as well as Russian war in Ukraine, as well as the Russian attempts to influence Western governments, they want to change the perception of reality that we have so that we behave the way they want us to behave. So that's the logic. And disinformation is one of the tools on the road to achieving that kind of effect. So what are the key elements? There are some key elements that are very well known. First is educated citizens. So people, especially in the social media era, that are able to have ability to think independently. First, the trouble with that approach is that science says for people it's very hard to do the rational thinking. About 20% of our decision making is only rationally based. The rest, we might not want to recognize that, but the rest is emotional and instinctive. And as it is so, with those that are very good with understanding that, giving the right piece of information or disinformation at the right time and context creates these effects. So what we have to do is also have an ability to recognize when this is happening. For instance, when do you speak in online environment with a people or with the robots? When some news became viral, because of people reaction or because robotic network triggering algorithm and making it very popular. All of those things really matter. So transparency and ability to see that. Third thing is on a platform basis. We've recently run a research on Twitter. It used to be Twitter when we did the research.
Yes, social network formerly known as Twitter, yes.
But we did still, it was a Twitter. And what we measured, and we do have our own systems that track Russian botnets in different social media. We measured what happened after full scale of Russian invasion, when Twitter took I'd say a decisive action, and the Russian impact in the platform really decreased. And then as Elon Musk took over the platform, we saw the steps that followed up that once again increased, and we have numbers and data to support that, about almost twofold the reach of Russian propaganda, Russian government propaganda sources. And that goes back to the idea, should we leave social media fully to be and act as they wish, or there have to be certain rule sets? I would say there have to be certain rule sets, but they have to be really very, very careful, because what we don't want is to go into the other direction too much, and which is where the governments start to make the rules, who's who and who's allowed or not allowed to speak what. So it's not an easy balance, and clearly we've seen that Elon Musk, for whatever reason, I'll not speculate on the reasons, but has really tilted towards, like, the idea that trolls and bots have the same rights as people, which I don't really agree with.
I'm just gonna follow up real quick on what you've said, because I mean, this hasn't happened, and I'm sure you're very aware, this hasn't happened in 2022, nor has it started in 2023. We have seen the influence of especially social media and politics and geopolitics. I mean, let's just go back to, the whole fiasco with algorithms and, kind of disseminating information to different people, Cambridge Analytica thing. So basically, countries and private entities have found these methods of virtually weaponizing information, right? And we did have the warning signs for that since, 2016, even 2014 even. Why did not much change? Why wasn't there any, movement in the direction you have said? Not regulating it completely, not making it like, government stated communication network like China, if you will. Why wasn't there much done in that sphere by the governments to protect themselves from these influences?
Well, I think first, there was an attempt, I remember some time ago, by Australia to put some kind of regulation on that was mostly directed at Facebook and Google. And they basically said, we're going to leave your country, so we don't care what is your regulation, we'll not abide. So the first point is there have to be large enough entity so that the social media companies are ready to listen first. Second, Europe has been trying to attempt certain level of regulation, but regulating tech sector, which is so dynamic, and one thing is the big thing today, and tomorrow it might be absolutely different based on a very different technical logic, it is really hard. And kind of following through is also hard. So Europe is regulating, but it is slow and not always getting the balance in a way that the regulation really impacts the real world. And the third thing is US, which is another extreme where, like, we see everything has the right of voice. And I do believe there will be at some point some kind of regulation on that as well in the US, but it's a long time to take that kind of decision. And if you mentioned Cambridge Analytica, I'm prone to raise one of our own experimentations where we ask how serious is that risk from that kind of behavior. So the logic is, we all having digital lives, we leave a lot of data about ourselves. Data is the power of this century. And when somebody is able to collect that and correlate to us individually, that constitutes a very strong, powerful base of information. So if you add on your need to manipulate decision making, it might end up in a very strong outcome. So we did try in an exercise, military exercise. We actually tried to replicate that method where we tried to scrape the data of the soldiers that participated in an exercise. Only open source, no illegal activity, no hacking, just whatever is available on internet. Bit sophisticated, but not illegal. And then tried, based on that information, attempt change the behavior of soldiers during the military exercise. And we were able to make them disobey orders, leave the positions they have to defend, and etc., etc. That's against the backdrop. And of course, then the instructors were meeting them, and they had a bit of a hard time later on. But they recognized, but even then, if you have a deep insight in a human being, you have an ability to issue these, what we call effects, so that they actually change the behavior. So that is where we have to really start, because the technology is really kind of improving with that. And that is where we believe, the next stage of that influence operations going. And that is many things will be really difficult.
Yeah, thank you for this very terrifying comment. I'm now terrified I kind of knew it. Because back in the day, again, my favorite story of the whatever Cambridge Analytica, I think it was the British government who named the technology they were using like a weapon grade technology. So I knew there was something there, but it's very bizarre to hear that on an actual experiment you were able to change the minds of the people actually holding weapons.
Like we heard before that there's a corporation, Facebook, they don't want to lose money, they won't let the board of directors won't let Zuckerberg do like this and this, or Google the same. But now there's Twitter, which is owned by one man who does whatever he wants. He can destroy this company to the ground, and he can do whatever he wants. He can do these experiments. And so does probably Zuckerberg and probably Google as well, if they wish to. Now we breached this. We thought there is a red line, but there's none.
Well, true. And yes, we have had a lot of troubles and problems with the companies like Meta and Google, but they're not the biggest risk. I think what we're seeing increasingly is more and more people recognize, including authoritarian governments and some political players, that this is a technology to look after because it delivers. And that is where I would say is it's not about just business income as is typical the way to use it in a context of the companies, but it can be used in much more profound ways. Of course, I should also note, these are small scale experiments that are proof of a concept. The technology on that profound change we've not seen yet. But I cannot tell that I have not seen a specific governments working on these technologies. I've seen them work on that. So it is a very kind of new layer. And for you in Ukraine, you should recognize then the will to fight, readiness to be resilient is one of your core assets right now as a nation at war, as people under the attack, as a society under the attack, as well as for the military. So this is one of the core elements that we have to really protect. And the trouble is, the new technology has just come in and really been developed, like generative AI, I think GPT-4 and all of Midjourneys and others. Your listeners would be very well aware of those new technologies. But if you mix that into that framework, it really becomes very much more potent because you can scale it, automate it, and basically train AI to deliver that.
Mark, are we ever going to have a podcast that is not going to terrify me to the core of my soul? Is it ever going to happen? I don't think so. I just guess it's the sign of the times. Before we proceed, you just heard Mr. Jānis say, that information readiness is our biggest asset. And this is what we do on this channel. Usually we're trying to inform people as best as we can. So if you're still not subscribed to this channel, please do subscribe to it, leave a like, leave a comment, share this video so we can all be better informed and better prepared for whatever it is that is to come in terms of information warfare and social media and all that. Thank you. And back to the discussion, which is terrifying. Something I would like to, this was kind of unplanned, but it kind of follows from our conversation. I mean, we in Ukraine more than anybody know how Russia influences us via social media. I personally, Mark personally, and everyone in Ukraine can see that with their own eyes every day in their feeds. It's very, it's not subtle. It's often, very, very there, but nevertheless, it spikes in emotion. But there's another very fascinating country that I'm very sure is using this kind of those means to influence the agenda. And by that, I mean China. But they're not as on the nose, probably, as Russia is in terms of at least this part of the world. What's up with those guys? Can you give us some insights?
Well, yes, you're right. They're using influence operations, but you are also right. For us, including me sitting in Riga, used to the Russian disinformation influence, they come across as a bit of a, not very convincing, let's put it this way. And at some point, I would even argue in European theater, counterproductive to what I assumed they wanted to achieve. So I don't know what is the reason for that, but I can tell that in the region that is immediate neighbors to China, Southeast Asia, Asia Pacific, and these places, they have far stronger impact. The difference between Russia and China, in my view, is Russia is living on its post-Soviet legacy. Is they know how to screw any system. They don't develop systems, but they always find ways to find loopholes, to game the system, etc. And that's what is the basic skill on which they base their strategy. China is a different player. They're not that good. They, in most of the cases, copy the Russian approach, but then they're doing the technology of their own. So instead of just gaming someone else's technology, like, I don't know, Facebook or Instagram, they have their own WeChat, they have their own TikTok. And TikTok actually right now is the most powerful social media algorithm there is. And basically you can win elections with that. If you use it properly, it's very powerful. And the trouble is, we don't know when and if the government of China comes in and tweaks the algorithm or uses the data that is in abundance in that platform that we live as societies, as voters, and etc. So the risks are there, and as I've said, on the technology part, these risks are growing. And we should not forget that China is developing so-called social credit system. That is a system where in some parts of China, people are graded on everything they do online and in the physical world because of surveillance. And then based on their credit, they can or cannot do things like take a train to another city. If your social credit is bad, then you can't. So, and that is basically this kind of social control system based on large amounts of data and the information. So there are these elements that, as I've said, have not all come together but I would see as risks. And I think that is where certainly many of European governments are very actively thinking whether these risks are very too high and what to do with these technologies. My view is that it is highly likely they will be one way or another forbidden or cut.
Like Trump, I remember it was Trump days wanted to ban TikTok as far as I remember, and they almost like
which sounds very weird now. Like his politics were extremely weird now, and ever now I'm like looking at this guy and I'm like,
and Nord
this is
Stream
the same
too,
guy who wanted to ban TikTok. Although it's weird.
No, but
by the way, Nord
his
Stream
foreign policy
again,
guys
like something
were
that some
making
things are
better decisions than,
incomprehensible.
He would want to. But anyway, do you think banning TikTok will be like more good than bad? Like net good more than bad?
Basically, it is a business project, but a business project with a catch. And the idea is that all companies that function in China, there is a specific rule that there is an available data access. And if, let's say, a US government attempts to access the users' data of the companies, then there we see a big, typically, trial happening, and there's a fight, and etc. We're aware. When that happens in somewhere in Beijing, there's no clue, nothing is known. And given the increased ability to impact, for instance, electoral outcomes, we have an upcoming US elections. So is it from a national security perspective small enough risk or big enough risk? From the place I sit, it's a really sizable risk of that, in a way that data can be accessed, but also when users are using actively. And I think there's a pretty big audience for TikTok in US. When suddenly the algorithms are tweaked to favor one or another or the third outcome. The democracy is not supposed to be run in this way, especially from an outside power, outside government. So does some people losing income or entertainment outweigh the risk to the democracy and national security? I don't believe so. Well, you see, like your country has an experience where you neglect some of the fundamentals of the, let's say, political national security, where it leads. I don't mean that much of 22, but 14. So therefore, I think there's one lesson that is to act prudently and be very more careful than careless.
To our Western viewers, by the way, we in Ukraine have an experience of banning Russian social media networks and Russian IT companies. We banned a huge corporation.
VK.
Yeah, are like Russian Facebook, which like most of Ukrainians were using, young Ukrainians at least, and Yandex, which is a huge corporation with their search engine, with their navigation systems, etc., like all the taxi drivers were using. We banned them in 2017, if I'm not mistaken, and yeah, it went fine. Everyone just
and nobody
forgot.
died.
Yeah, I want it's probably the last one, but I want to come back to the Russian informational operations topic, and I want to ask you one very straightforward question: would be Russia considered the biggest informational threat to the world right now, or is it China, or is it someone else, or could we say like that?
It depends where you sit. For us in this conversation, it's clearly Russia. Also, the way they are ready to apply the methods and the way for what they use it is really, for me, the most dangerous. But I would assume there might be countries sitting in a very different part of this world that would have a different view, very legitimately different view. But for the sake of this conversation, I'd say for us here in this discussion, Russia is a top threat. Luckily, some of that edge that they had has been taken away. So, not to leave everyone scared, I would say that, in fact, throughout, like the military capabilities of Russia have been degraded through the brave and great sacrifice of Ukrainian people, so has also, I think, this ability to influence, because once it's exposed too much, it's really not as effective. Of course, they're trying to get back into the game in the West, but I'd still say it's a steep climb for them anyway. Where the trouble is for them, they still have such a strong hold on the Russian own people, and that is that's bad for them, but eventually it's bad for us as well, as we see.
Thank you very much for spending the time talking to us. Guys, again, please share and like this video so more people know about, we're actually talking about the reasons why you should be sharing videos like this. Weirdly, but this is our job now, which is a great thing. Thank you, Mr. Sārts, for your time. And yeah, we will see you next week, hopefully less scared. We remain optimistic, but yeah, this is what we do now here. This is the world we live in. Those are the rules now.
Well, isn't that interesting that you, that I suppose live in the constant air raids, say this is scary?
Oh, believe me, at this point, it's one thing to live under the air raid sirens and be scared of a rocket, which has a name and a trajectory and the obvious outcome. It is far more terrifying to have as a threat something that is not tangible, not understood to an extent that would make it, more physical, and also that has some unknown results. Like this is something that you can't touch and something you can't comprehend is far scarier, for the foreseeable future, rather than a rocket that what it's going to do. Like it's scary, but on the greater scale, I don't know what's more scary, really.
So let's make it understandable and less scary.
Yeah, but that's what we do here on this channel. Great, thank you very much, guys.
Thank you.
See you next week.